Hello, I'm Leon, and I'm 13 years old. And my story is about how I got bullied at school. I never thought it could happen to me, and I want to share with you what I had to go through and how I got it to stop. It all started when my older sister Laura moved to another high school, as she had this amazing dance talent that they specialized in. I missed her terribly on my daily walk to school, as now she had to travel far away and had to leave the house really early. However, it was okay as we both walked to school with my best friend Max. We'd all have such a laugh together. That was until Max and his parents moved away, as his mom got a new job. I was mortified as it all came so out of the blue when he told me, and he was mortified too. Now I'd have to walk to school and back on my own when we went back after the summer vacation. During my summer vacation, I especially missed Max, as we'd always be at each other's houses. Laura was always busy seeing her friends or going to dance rehearsal. I felt so alone, and I was dreading the walk to school when we went back. I did have another friend at school called Julian, but he had to get the bus to school, and most of the time after school, he went to football practice as he loved sports. And soon the time arrived when we went back to school. My walk alone was long and boring. But just a few days in, something happened, and everything changed. One day, I met Simon on my way home after school. Simon went to my school and was a couple of years older than me. He had a reputation for being a bully, as he was bad-tempered and didn't care what anyone thought of him. He also knew he intimidated others as he was taller. So I was walking home, minding my own business, when I saw Simon ahead, listening to music. Well, I decided to rush past him and avoid him. But when I tried to go around him, he suddenly moved, and I bumped into him. He was furious. "What's the matter with you?" he said. "Can't you watch where you're going?" I tried to say something back, but I got my words jumbled with the shock of his outburst, and he just laughed at me and called me weak. To make matters even worse, I suddenly realized that Leah, Mary, and Paul were also nearby and joined in with Simon as he laughed at me. I could feel my cheeks burning bright red, which Simon also cruelly pointed out. I didn't know what to do, so I ran home and heard them all laughing and talking about me as I did. When I got home, I felt so sad and down. How could they be so mean? However, when my mom asked me how school was, I didn't want to tell her what happened, so I told her everything was fine. I assumed seeing Simon on my way home was a one-off, so I wouldn't have to hopefully deal with it again. The next morning, I told Julian about it, and he dropped the bombshell that he knew Simon had moved nearer to me now. That was his new walk to school. He suggested that I join him at soccer practice, as Simon was also on the team, and he might see me differently. We might even become friends like he is with him. But the problem was, I hated soccer, and I wasn't very good at it. I even thought Julian would have known this, so I mentioned it to him again. He said he knew that, but suggested I went to his place on Saturday to have soccer practice with the team anyway. Try to get something in common with them. After soccer practice, they always watched an action movie or played video games together. Simon was okay if you got to know him, but I stood my ground and said, "I'm not interested in computer games or action movies either. I like butterflies and nature documentaries." "That's kid stuff," Julian said. "And you wonder why the other boys can't do anything with you," Julian replied in frustration. Simon continued to annoy me daily, and his taunts were getting ruder and ruder. And Leah, Mary, and Paul continued to giggle nervously as they watched on. One day, on the way home from school, Simon cruelly grabbed my cap and started to throw it back and forth with Paul. He was making fun of me, and Paul was nervously joining in with him again. Then Leah and Mary turned up and joined in too. Suddenly, out of spite, Simon threw the cap into the river, and it quickly drifted away. I was furious, and I shoved Simon hard. Everyone was silent for a moment, and just stared at us. Then, Simon punched me. I fell to the ground, and I saw Simon's angry face above me. He threatened to finish me off for good if I snitched on him and told anyone at home or at school. At home, my mom was concerned, as I had scratches on my arms and chin. But I told her I had fallen down an embankment trying to retrieve my cap, which had fallen accidentally into the river. When I was alone in my room, I felt so down and upset. I couldn't concentrate on my homework or my favorite nature documentary. My change was soon noticed at home. My mom and Laura thought that my separation from Max was hitting me hard. Laura asked, "Are you okay, little brother? You're so closed off." And she invited Max to come over for the weekend. When Max came to see me the following Saturday, I showed him my new poster with exotic butterflies and wanted to know everything about his new apartment and his new school. It was the first time in a long time that I felt so relaxed and more like myself again. We talked all night until we heard a tap at the window. When we looked up, A creepy clown face was staring back at us. I screamed and Max rushed to the window. Laura suddenly charged into my room too, wondering what all the noise was about. Max had already opened the window and was screaming after the fleeing clown. It was Simon. I knew it. I burst into tears, and I told Max and Laura everything that had been going on and how cruel Simon and his friends had been to me. Laura and Max had great sympathy, and were both angry with Simon. The next morning, Max had called Leah, Mary, and Paul and asked them all to meet him in the park in the afternoon. They didn't expect to see me and Laura too when they met. Max and Laura told them how bad the situation was for me and how it started to make me distracted and depressed. At first, they protested a bit, but then they showed that they felt guilty and ashamed that they joined in with Simon. Paul even confessed that he had been too cowardly to stand up to Simon and knew none of it was right. Laura reminded them that Simon could have chosen to pick on any one of them instead, so they all needed to stick together. We all left feeling better. And Laura asked Mom to drop me off for a change, telling her I'd hurt my foot. But I knew Mom couldn't pick me up as she was working. I panicked. But Laura assured me that she intended to deal with Simon after school, so I assumed that she'd walk me home. Leah, Mary, and Paul were now talking to me again and staying with me during the break, which Simon seemed confused by, but didn't seem to care too much. He even made a quip about me paying for protection, which he thought was just as sad as me. After school, I looked around for Laura, but I couldn't see her anywhere. How could she not show up to walk me back? I thought that maybe Simon might have already left, so I decided to run home as quickly as possible and go a different way. However, I hadn't got far when I saw Simon. He immediately started insulting me, asking me where my butterfly net was. He was angry and walked up to me menacingly. I thought he might hit me. He pushed me lightly, then told me I was the biggest loser he'd ever met. I was mortified and felt helpless. I couldn't put up with this every day. I was broken. I tried to rush off to the river and get away from him, but he followed me, taunting and pushing me cruelly. However, when we got to the pedestrian bridge, Leah, Mary, and Paul were also there. They saw that Simon was bullying me, and although they didn't join in, they didn't say anything to make him stop either. How could this be my life? Then suddenly, the most amazing thing happened. Laura appeared and stood right in front of Simon, but didn't say anything. She just stared him out sternly. You could see Simon squirming, and he kept looking embarrassed towards Leah, Mary, and Paul. Laura demanded that he leave me alone from now on, and that if she heard differently, she'd deal with it. Plus, he owed me a new cap. She also told him how cruel he was for picking on someone younger and shyer than him. It didn't make him tough. It made him a coward, as he knows that I wouldn't fight back. Simon's cheeks flushed red, and he ran off. Leah and Mary looked shocked, and Paul tried to hide his giggles. And I never got bothered by Simon again. I also apologized to Julian for dismissing his help. He was cool about it and understood. I should be me and do whatever I want, but it might also be worth compromising too, even if it means doing something I wouldn't normally do. I even went to a soccer practice, and it was quite fun. Simon ended up going home sick. I think he faked it. He was avoiding me now, rather than the other way around. He was just a coward. Thankfully, I only had a short experience with bullying, but I was determined to help others in the same situation. I spoke with our class teacher, Mrs. Sanders, who ran an anti-bullying project at school, and I offered to volunteer. This included handing out flyers and talking to others about their experiences. It made me so much more confident, and I really felt I was making a difference. I even caught Simon one time looking at the flyers, so I hope he might become aware of the consequences of his actions. So please do let me know if anything like this happened to you. And if you are experiencing bullying, then do tell your friends and family, as they will be able to help and give you advice and support. Or if you feel like you can't talk to them, do let your teachers know, and I promise, things can only get better. Please do share your stories, and remember, bullies are cowards. Leave some comments and I look forward to reading them. Bye for now and be kind.